Sound of Money with Santosh Sirur.
Hello and welcome to another super special episode of The Sound of Money with me, Santosh Sirur. And on my episode today, joining me from Bangalore is Shalini Pillay. She is the partner with KPMG, one of the big four. And of course, she's the India lead for the Global Capability Centers, or GCC as we know. Hi, Shalini, and welcome to The Sound of Money.
Hi, Santosh. Good morning and nice to connect with you here.
Yeah, glad to connect with you on this podcast. And GCCs is the buzzword in India, and I can imagine, the kind of visibility that GCCs are getting across the business space. My first question, actually, in terms of global capability centers as we know them, GCCs, Shalini, what are the key drivers of growth for these in India, and more so, how do you see this industry panning out in the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay. Interesting that you say 5 to 10 years. I wouldn't be able to predict what it will look like that far out because of the world and the technology that's changing as rapidly. But to get us started, Santosh, and like we all know, the model is really fueled by what technology enables and allows global corporations, global enterprises to leverage what India has to offer in terms of a very rich, effective digital talent pool. And that's what's bringing global organizations to come in, leverage the model, establish capability hubs in that context. So the driver is technology at the core, and then it is talent and clusters of talent, India and beyond. Wherever global organizations see these clusters emerge, they will gravitate towards those locations to take advantage of these talent clusters. More importantly, the pace at which global organizations and their value chains are getting digitalized allows so much more to then get done remotely because it is all tech enabled. So ever post-COVID, one has actually seen tech adoption, new technologies emerge at quite a frantic pace. And that's a large part that fuels this model.
Yeah.
So that in a nutshell is really what is driving GCC growth.
Yeah, but very specific to India. So very specific to India in terms of GCC space, right? In terms of the contribution to the India's economy, what are the kind of potential areas of expansion you foresee in the coming months to years?
Up until now, Santosh, GCCs have been a very headcount intensive model. And which is why, I mean, what is 2 million going up to 5 million kind of headcount of talent that will get direct talent that will get employed as one sees the run up to 2030. One could argue those numbers may be even larger. If you look at GCCs being an ecosystem play, one where they collaborate with tech service providers, with startups, with a bunch of others to really get the model coming together very effectively. So there's a large employment play, direct employment play very clearly. But besides that, if you look at it, it is also about these hubs getting set up. The minute you're setting up a center, whether it is a 2,000 man center or a 10,000 or a 25,000 man center, they're in all shapes and sizes, like you may be aware. With it comes a lot of indirect employment. First of all, there's a real estate angle. If you look at real estate reports, GCCs have contributed very significantly to the commercial real estate play, which has gone up very significantly over the last few years. That apart, the minute you're setting up an office, there are all kinds of other infrastructure facilities and other services that are triggered. And in some sense, there's a lot of other indirect employment. Today, if you go to any of these GCC events, you will see staffing companies, you will see real estate providers, you will see a whole lot of tech service providers of all kinds across various platforms. You will see catering services, you will see security services. So if you look at the indirect employment, it is massive. So that's one dimension. The second I'll call out is, while there are some hotspots for GCCs, there's a whole tier 2 play that's emerging, which is really actually looking at India and the infrastructure, the ecosystem in some of these next destinations also emerging quite rapidly. So suddenly, this is actually a pan-India phenomenon. Whether it's the central government or various state governments, everyone's working in unison to actually take advantage of what this model and the opportunity could present. And then,
Yeah,
not to forget, if you look at the recent union budget announcements, the whole
absolutely.
cloud digital infrastructure is going to get a massive impetus. Today, there are destinations which are suddenly going to look more attractive because of the data centers and some of the digital infrastructure they're setting up. So all
Yeah.
of this coming together, actually GCCs are quite a significant force when you look at fueling the economy going forward. It is
Mm.
definitely the next 5 years, we're going to continue to see large numbers coming in. It is really the gold rush.
Yeah.
Beyond that, but we must keep in mind that this model is getting impacted by technology. It's going to be
Yeah.
less headcount intensive. It's going to be largely a high skill play
Mm.
and a value play. So that's certainly
Mm.
changing the model as we've known it so far. It's going to change quite rapidly.
Absolutely. And tech is really by the day changing, literally by the day,
Yeah.
actually in physical, in the way we see that. But Shalini, in terms of the cost arbitrage angle, right, and the talent, of course, how does the India's cost arbitrage advantage actually impact the growth of these GCCs? And what are the kind of factors influencing this particular advantage that India is in a sweet spot today?
To be honest, actually, Santosh, quite often you hear that cost arbitrage getting questioned a bit increasingly in today's context. So,
Okay.
just to go back to fundamentals, the cost arbitrage, or as used to be known as the wage arbitrage, which actually was the genesis for this model about 20, 30 years ago when offshoring really started and got
Started.
kicked off, it was
Yeah.
the significant wage differential which
Mm.
presented a cost arbitrage for organizations to take advantage of.
Yeah.
When you look at the model as it has evolved,
Mm.
obviously costs have gone up, but I would say they've gone up worldwide. There still is a really good arbitrage for players to leverage on. But today
Mm.
it's increasingly about taking advantage of that costs given the digital talent availability. So it's
Yeah.
not just cost alone, but it is to say, uh, all things equal, at that cost, look at the quality and the high-end talent you can actually get.
Yeah.
There is
Yeah.
there is a scale play more importantly. I mean, there are other locations globally that also have attractive talent. But when you
Mm.
look at the scale and the depth of what India has to offer, that is what makes it really compelling.
Okay. So that was my second question. And you mentioned in the first point, right, about the talent in India.
Yeah.
Whilst we talk of the super demographic dividend that India has in terms of the average age, what are the kind of challenges on the ground in terms of the talent? I do know there is availability, but what at the same time you have resources which probably are not employable in that sense. Do you see that on the ground, and what's the kind of feedback you get from corporates?
There certainly is. In fact, I will refer to a paper we worked on with NASCOM a couple of years ago. In fact, 2024 actually, to be
Mm.
precise, where we interviewed and surveyed the industry across a very large but representative sample of GCCs to understand what are their top challenges and what are they actually gearing to address for the future. The number
Yeah.
one challenge there, Santosh, was talent. So
Correct.
it is
Mm.
ironical. Talent is the reason why the opportunity exists and what makes it attractive, but it is also the top challenge that most GCCs are aware of and they're
Mm.
looking at how they need to address it. So let me break that down a bit because
Sure.
it's a very broad piece. But when you look at talent, it then emerged that there were four categories of talent related challenges that they were dealing with. The number
Mm.
one was the quality and the deployability of talent. And,
Mm.
and that will continue to be a challenge because if you look at the pace at which technology is changing, how do you make sure that the whether it's the graduating pool or the existing talent pool keeps pace with the new skills that are required? So it is a big challenge. The
Yeah.
quality and making sure that the skills are really uh, fit for the context of the future and what we need to address. The
Yeah.
second challenge really is that of attraction and retention of talent. Again,
Yeah.
in as crowded a space where you have a new GCC coming up every week in the country, everyone
Yeah.
vying for a similar digital talent pool, it's very
Mm.
competitive. So, what will it take for a new GCC or an existing one to attract and retain talent becomes another big point
Yeah.
and a big risk. Uh, the third really is leadership talent. We must remember GCCs are steadily moving up this so-called value curve. They're getting into more and more core business context heavy areas, which is
Yeah.
actually opening up the opportunity for global roles to sit out of here. And
Mm.
hence, there is a need for more global leadership roles and positions.
Mm.
Today, we are seeing a little bit of a deficit in the leadership space there, whether
Yeah.
top rung or middle leadership or functional leadership. And there is going to be a need to step up and invest in that space so that our leaders are truly of global quality, if I may call
True.
it that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
leadership is a challenge. And fourth, last not the least, there is a concern to say, how do we look at cost arbitrage? Is that sustainable?
Yeah.
And like we just spoke of in the previous question, cost arbitrage has been shrinking. It is still compelling, but
Mm.
very important to start looking at it with a lens that's a little beyond cost. It's
Yeah.
important to start looking at this from a value lens alongside cost. So cost doesn't go away. You quite
Mm.
often hear people say we came for cost and stayed for value. That doesn't mean the cost has gone away. Cost will
Yeah.
always have to be a very critical imperative. The day you lose the cost focus, your model could be questioned. But
Absolutely.
but
There's
how
a
do you
very, yeah. Yeah.
manage? So
Carry on.
these are, in a nutshell, sorry, I may have taken a little
No.
longer, Santosh, but those are the
No.
four talent risks that one is seeing. The good news is that all GCCs are acutely aware of this and working very proactively to address each of these risks. And one is
Yeah.
seeing them be in a good position as they manage talent for the future.
Absolutely. You have actually, Shalini, you have put it very comprehensively. So I appreciate that. I also want to check with you on this third point that you mentioned about this middle and the senior level leadership challenges, because the kind of leadership that you see in the West or in the Europe or in Southeast Asia, you probably may have that kind of a gap. Is that the concern you foresee, or what's the kind of challenges? That's the first question. And the second is, how are GCCs trying to overcome this challenge?
Okay.
Because that really leads the way.
So the challenge, if you really analyze, firstly, you've got to look at this in terms of where is the GCC model headed. And like I said, as they move up the maturity curve, the newer GCCs coming in today are coming with a very deliberate focus to create deep capability hubs here, which
Mm.
means people leading those hubs need to come with deep domain and tech capability.
Yeah.
You don't really just need people who know what it takes to set up a GCC from a program management standpoint, from a headcount standpoint, where you managed armies of people and set up thousands of people coming to. That's a different skill. You do need a little bit of that. But
Yeah.
increasingly, if you want global roles moving here, you need deep domain, deep tech experience
Mm.
and a global lens. They need to have
Yeah.
a global lens of how and why the global enterprise is going to benefit from this. The
Mm.
challenge with the model, and somewhere it's an inherent challenge which we need to address, because GCCs, as is obvious, it's a remote model. You are remote from the end customer more often than not. You are
Yeah.
remote from the core business more often than not. And
True.
hence, for leaders to actually have that very deep business domain context may not have been the obvious way to kind of build your leadership, but increasingly
Yeah.
it's going to be so. So if you want to look at, and you will see there are articles that talk of 6,500 global leadership roles moving to 30,000 in the next 3 to 4 years.
Wow.
If
Mm.
one has to get anywhere close to that, you're going to have to bridge this gap of deep domain business context with a global lens, with tech capability, and you're going to have those kind of leaders. So
Yeah.
that is where there is a gap where one needs to build and groom leaders in this
Yeah.
context much more
Mm.
rapidly. In
Mm.
terms of what people are doing, I think the recognition of this is clearly set in because people know that's their requirement. So
Yeah.
skilling and grooming leaders for the future with some of these in mind is critical. They're doing it through some interesting ways. You see this a two in a box model, which many and most GCCs have, where you have peers defined who you work with onshore seamlessly for
Yeah.
every important role, functional or technical. You're actually joined at the hip with a peer who sits onshore. So
Yeah.
that's an effective way to make sure that you're
Absolutely.
transferring knowledge effectively. You're seeing
Yeah.
people take on GPO or global process ownership roles here, which
Mm.
automatically give them a global process vantage point.
Yeah,
The
got it.
minute they have that, it's a stepping stone for them to then get that global lens and perspective. So there's a
Mm.
lot of work happening in the market, Santosh, today, where whether it's B schools who are trying to work with various players to create and build GCC leadership skills, or whether it's GCCs themselves helping
Yeah.
groom and upskill their leaders, there's some really good work happening there.
Yeah, that's really wonderful to know. And in terms of GCCs in India, right, in terms of the key locations, Shalini, which are the ones which are really emerging, probably as I would say preferred destinations? I hope it goes beyond the Mumbais and the Delhis and the Punes, because the other challenge I'm sure on the ground is the actual infrastructure challenges, right? I mean, reaching to office itself is a challenge in most of these locations. So, what are those kind of factors actually driving that growth?
An interesting question because there's a lot of noise around that today. Ever since we've seen the government play a key role trying to influence, pretty much every state government today is keen to attract GCCs. You'll see, and there have already been a lot of state government GCC policies launched, with several
Mm.
others in the works. So every
Uh-huh.
state is looking at what they need to do to try and attract GCCs to them.
Mm.
Again, a personal view, but as things stack up today, I do believe Bangalore still holds the position. It still rules the roost in terms of the top GCC destination because of both the breadth and depth of the tech talent that it offers.
Mm.
It is notorious for its infrastructure and uh, traffic woes, but
Yeah,
despite all, it continues to attract new players because talent and availability of talent is the number one. And it also
true.
has a very strong ecosystem. Like we know,
Mm.
Hyderabad has very fast caught up and is catching up. The sheer and probably overtaken Bangalore in terms of the sheer number of new GCCs that have come in.
Mm.
But it is still a young destination. A lot of GCCs are still young. They're not of the
Yeah.
scale and maturity that you've seen in Bangalore, but it is fast emerging and definitely a very competitive location, a very compelling location, a city that has had a better vision from an infrastructure point of view for sure,
Mm.
and fast catching up. Then you've
Mm.
seen a lot of centers emerge both in the NCR region. Gurgaon specifically has a sweet cluster of GCCs. Pune has emerged as a fast growing location. And then, of course, you've seen Chennai. Chennai is interesting. It had some of the very early start, early GCCs that got set up there.
Mm.
Somewhere along the way, may have lost a little focus, but has very quickly tried to uh, grab the lost ground on that space. In fact, they have a very
Yeah.
interesting tier two strategy as well. So you will
Mm.
see locations like Coimbatore, Madurai actually very well poised to take advantage of the market.
Yeah.
Mumbai very recently among the latter in the pack has begun to get some attention because the Maharashtra
Yeah.
government's just announced their GCC policy.
Yeah.
Again, if you look at Mumbai as financial capital, lot of really strong dimensions to work on. The
Yeah.
recent investments in infrastructure have made it a very attractive city. But how it
Yeah.
pans out for GCCs, one will have to see because it comes with its own challenges of cost of living, housing,
Yeah.
all of that. But the
Absolutely.
point I'd make, and then there are a whole large number of tier two locations, whether
Mm.
it is Kochi, whether it is Jaipur, whether it is Vizag, whether it is Mohali. There are lots of locations. And of course, let me not forget Gujarat. The state of Gujarat
Yeah.
actually has made some very significant investments and promise, which makes
Mm.
it attractive. The recent union
Yeah.
budget has also just put out a very, very compelling case because you've extended the tax holiday from a gift city
True.
perspective, which makes it
Yeah.
super attractive. So
Yeah.
you will see a lot of this. But the point I would make, Santosh, is that the location attractiveness is not just a matter of policy and tax concessions.
Mm.
Talent will be the number one factor that will drive players to set up
Yeah.
shop in a location.
Mm. Mm.
Quality, depth, technical talent
Yeah.
is the number one criteria. The second would be the ecosystem play, because, like I said, GCCs today are a hybrid model. So, how strong is the tech ecosystem? How strong is the startup ecosystem?
Mm.
How compelling is the academia network? Because
True.
research and collaboration is going to play a very big role. Those will influence infrastructure. Yes, is important to make, and hence also add to the cost of setting up a
Yeah.
GCC in a location. So all of this actually needs to come together. It's complex, but it's interesting because every state and all of these locations are doing their bit to actually look even more attractive than they have been so far. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
action in this space for sure.
Absolutely. In fact, you mentioned about these government initiatives, but Shalini, what a lot of our listeners want to know is in terms of we talk about yes the plus points, but in terms of the major challenges these GCCs and here I'm talking about the guys abroad who want to come to India to set up the shops, right? What are the kind of feedback that you get? What are the kind of uh, challenges that they are facing there that they want to come and set up shops in India? Beyond the cost arbitrage and the knowledge stack.
I actually personally think it's become a lot easier because
Mm,
whether it's a single window clearance system, getting all your approvals done very quickly, whether it
yeah,
is state governments ensuring you have approvals in place, helping you with real estate concessions if you're going into a new
yeah,
location. This is more the new
mm,
emerging destinations and the existing ones. I do
yeah,
believe today the state governments roll out the red carpet for anyone who's wanting to come in. So,
yeah,
in my view, it has only gotten easier. It's not really hard or challenging because
mm,
there's a lot that happens in that space. A lot of service providers, professional services firms, we do this ourselves, helping GCCs come set up. And if I look at the time it's taking to set them up, it has been that cycle time is getting crunched quite significantly. So, lots
mm,
of service providers who make it easy for players coming in. There are various models like, come in here, try to do it all themselves. There's the build, operate, transfer model. There's an assisted
yeah,
build model. There's a lot of hand holding, which is making this whole process easier and easier, actually, Santosh. So I
okay,
believe, and the competitive landscape between states actually is to the advantage of some of these players coming in because each state wants to outdo the other. So, like I said, they all roll
exactly,
out the red carpet, which is
yeah,
making it easier. If
yeah,
you look at, again, I refer to the recent union budget announcements. For
mm,
example, the safe harbor rules, the views on what has just been done from a transfer pricing perspective actually is very encouraging in terms of
uh-huh,
bringing a lot more certainty, bringing clarity to what the road ahead could look like. So I think we
yeah,
are progressing in the right direction, creating an even more enabling environment for GCCs to come in.
wonderful. One last question before I let you go. In terms
Sure.
of an advice, maybe because you've been through, both the sides of the coin, you've seen both the sides of the coin. What's the kind of advice would you give to these kind of companies, who are looking to set up a GCC in India? That's one. And a related question: apart from BFSI and health sector and R&D, what are the kind of other emerging GCCs that you see coming beyond this space and a lot beyond that? And maybe a third last additional question: apart from India, who are the competing countries competing with India? In this GCC space.
Okay, so I'll take it in a certain order. Firstly, today there is no industry sector that is not taking advantage of the GCC model.
Mm,
BFSI and tech players, actually, pure technology companies, have the prime mover advantage. They set up models in this space 25 years ago, and they have the largest headcount sitting here in India. But if you look at it beyond that, for example, you mentioned healthcare life sciences. They've actually been doing research out of here forever. They didn't call it GCC. They even today don't call it GCC. In fact, I should have caveated this upfront to say I see GCC as a term of convenience, Santosh. It is not a
okay.
terminology that most capability hubs want to use today. They
Mm,
simply want to be a seamless extension of their headquarters, of their
yeah.
global brand. And the term, we use it as a matter of convenience because it immediately gets us all on the same page in terms of the model we're talking about. But that's
Yeah.
all, that's how we should view it. So, healthcare
Mm,
companies, life sciences have been here forever. You see, consumer retail, which has a very large number of GCCs that have set up shop here, energy majors who have large hubs doing a lot of their, they run their digital twins from India. So
mm-hmm,
hardcore
uh-huh,
manufacturing, industrial manufacturing, heavy engineering, uh, insurance, private equity. I can't think of a single industry, and including, I would say, aviation, aviation and defense. Today, I can't think of a single industry that hasn't taken advantage of what the model offers. So it goes pretty much across industry. Uh,
Okay.
to your second point on other locations, yes, India. If I believe there is India and its advantage, what we offer is quite unparalleled in
Mm.
terms of the scale and the depth of setup. I don't believe there is any other geographical location that comes close. You do see a lot of other centers, whether it is in Europe, Poland, and some of the regions there. Budapest, you'll see a lot of centers there. You see in Mexico and closer, home closer, onshore. Philippines, there are centers, and
Yeah.
many of them for nearshoring advantages, for time zone advantages, for language advantages. But the scale of what India offers makes it an unparalleled location to come to. So I do
Yeah.
believe that is significant. And lastly, coming to your point on what advice, I think it's out there. If you look at the number of playbooks people publish, there are dime a dozen. But in my mind, I just say to people, because we host clients every week who are still
Yeah.
evaluating the model. So there's no
Mm.
such thing as being late to the party. There
Mm-hmm.
couldn't be a better
Interesting.
timing to come in here because you have the advantage to crunch the learning curve, take advantage of all the learnings others have had in hard ways over the years, and you
Yeah.
can get to set up your model and center faster, more efficient, more effective. Like I said, and I repeat, you don't have to do it yourself. You do it in a
Yeah.
collaborative way, taking
Yeah.
advantage of the ecosystem. So combination of learnings, working with the ecosystem, coming in a very deliberate, focused way, knowing what you want to do. You can actually cut short the journey that people have taken 25 years to get to. And you
Mm.
don't forget you're coming in a digitally native environment, you're coming in an AI native environment. So your
Yeah.
GCC can be really deliberate, focused, very, very purposeful. So there couldn't be a better time than now to actually, for those who've not yet evaluated the model, to look at it. For those who are here, I do believe there's an urgent and a compelling need for them to review their model, to look at how and where they need to repurpose themselves, restack,
Yeah.
rewire their models to make sure they're more fit for purpose for the
Yeah.
GCC model of tomorrow.
Mm.
So that's how I look at it, Santosh.
Absolutely a pleasure talking to you, Shalini, on so much of hope, positiveness, and I believe the building of the Viksit Bharat that we've been talking about. Shalini Pillay, well, she's a partner with KPMG and the India lead for Global Capability Centers or GCC. Thank you so much for being with on my podcast, The Sound of Money, Shalini.
Thank you, Santosh. Pleasure chatting with you. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. And well,
Bye
with
bye.
this, we come to the end of this episode of The Sound of Money with me, Santosh Sirur, and my guest, Shalini Pillai. Thank you so much for joining on this podcast. Bye bye and take care.